Hi everyone. It's been a while since I posted here, and I'm not sure what this channel is going to be, but I'm experimenting, and I feel like maybe this is a thought dump of some sort, like, an old school voice note, voice memo, vlog. Anyway, I feel like those who need to find this weird corner of my world will find it. Um, been thinking about law, love, and reality, and it's been it's been a weird time in my life where I'm going through multiple transitions in multiple spheres, and I'm reminded of. I mean, the past 2 days I've been struggling, to be quite honest with you. And as I was struggling, I found this, one scrolls through the phone because that's become the norm these days instead of feeling the boredom. When I was a kid, I used to journal, but now phones are everywhere, right? Anyway, but I helpfully found this video thanks to some trees I asked help from. Um, where where this guy was really like he brought me back to things I wanted to be brought to, but I was not quite able to see them clearly in the fog. And it's reminded me of an interaction I had with a law professor, a famous law professor, a few years ago, actually, when I was researching for my PhD. Uh, for those who don't know, I actually have a PhD in law by a weird turn of fate. But I remember what this guy said, which has stayed with me for many years as symptomatic of a lot of a lot of struggle in in the world we live in. And I mean, I think it's easy to dismiss this struggle as uh, as something of the West, or of modernity, something which comes from Western values and so on. But I actually think it runs deeper. uh, it's the very understanding of reality, because how we see law is uh, also how we see reality. Like, you cannot make law, you cannot like conceive of law, you cannot articulate law if you don't have like if you don't have some understanding of reality, or without some underlying assumptions about reality and what reality is. And I think what this guy said, he's a famous German legal theorist, actually. Um, and I could go and say more about, like, the specificities of his theories, but maybe that's for another video. Um, I mean, I'm sharing this because it was quite a personal interaction where we were talking about, mm, where he grew up and so on. And I was trying to understand like how he came to think like this, and I was trying to share some of my um, own upbringing, own pathways, and mm, anyway. So coming to what he actually said, it was something like he was actually giving us a lecture on facts and norms. And for those of you who have read law or studied law or have some hold some interest like in legal theory, you must know or you might know that mm, facts and norms are kind of like the basis of Western legal theory, but not just Western. I think it's most talked about in the Western context now because I mean, law all around the world has become very um, influential uh, or influenced rather by European colonialism, and therefore, like there has been some, you know, understanding of oh yeah, this is all Western, and therefore yeah. But I think it actually goes deeper. Um, this idea that the world can be divided, or the reality itself can be divided into facts and norms. So the idea that um, and this is what um, modern law is built on, this idea that there exists the nature of reality can be understood in terms of facts and norms, right? And um, and what underlies this? Uh, I mean, to put it another way, facts are things which are is things which are there, and norms are things which should be, right? The shoulds. So there's the is and the ought, or the is and the should, right? And um, it it has shaped. I mean, it's not just the modern way of thinking or the Western way of thinking. I think it shapes a lot, even in so-called Eastern traditions. Uh, and I say so-called Eastern and so-called Western because these are obviously made-up categories. There's nothing inherently Eastern and Western. There are people, different places. People have thought many different things in many different places, but some of them become uh, associated or distilled into these seemingly natural categories of East and West. But there's nothing natural about East and West. These are made up things. And um, even if you look in the so-called Eastern traditions, there is this very much understanding of is and ought as as an approach to understanding reality and the nature of reality. So if you look at, for example, the idea of moksha, right? Uh, that we are supposed to, right? Whenever the idea of supposed to comes in, you know immediately that there's an ought at work there, which is that a norm. That So the idea that life is suffering or pain, and we are supposed to get over it. We are supposed to break the cycles of life and death and so on, which is how Buddhism is often interpreted. But I mean, I'm not sure that's really what Buddha meant either. But well, that's how it is often talked about. And I mean, even in these like ancient Eastern spiritual ways, which were also giving laws in a way, right? Like what was spirituality doing in the East? It was uh, giving laws. It was telling you how to order society, right? So you find this division of is and ought, what life is or what reality is, and what it ought to be, or where you should strive or what you should do, right? So it's something I want to mark, like something I want to remark upon, something I feel like we should pay attention to, because it is important and it is relevant that um, we are talking about it this way. And this way of thinking has become so ingrained that when I was talking to this famous German legal theorist, he told me that there is there is no way, there's no other way to think about reality. There is the is and the ought. What is and what we strive towards. What is and what we should do. What is and what should become. He said there is no other way of thinking. And I was so struck by him saying that, because how ingrained has this idea become in our um, yeah, in our world, in this world, and in our way of like living reality, understanding reality, that uh, this is it is impossible almost. And take a moment to think about it. It is really impossible almost to think of something else, like to think of reality in other terms which are beyond is and ought, beyond what is and what should be, right? Because if we break this, if we say that this is nonsense, then the repercussions are huge. um I mean, first of all, it is hard to say that it is nonsense, because the imagination of it being otherwise is non-existent, or it is hard to grasp, it is hard to imagine. So this well-read, research professional professor could not whose daily life involves just thinking about these type of questions, could not even think that something else is possible, or some other understanding of reality is possible. um, for him, this was a truth. Is and ought is a truth. Like facts and norms are a truth. There is no other way of I mean, even if there are other ways, like this way of dividing reality, or this way of ordering reality, rather, cannot be denied. This is something fundamental. And all of us think like this, because um, like I was saying, the repercussions are huge. First of all, if you drop this, first of all, you can't drop this because it's hard to imagine outside of facts and norms. It is hard to imagine outside of what the fact is, and what we should reform, right? Because the very idea of reform comes from what should be, right? The ought. And but the very if you think about action, if you think about what you should be doing, right? That is also tied up entirely in the idea of is and ought, in the idea of facts and norms, in the idea that the nature of reality is facts and norms. So if you think about it, like grasping reality in terms of facts and norms gives you very easy guidance about what to do, right? Because
this is what it is, and what you should do is this, right? So it's a very um, I mean, it's a very powerful way of apprehending reality because um, then can you can come to the idea of what the Easterns call, what like in India, in South Asia, they call dharma, right? The right way to act, which is an ought, again, the norm, right? The ought, the way we should do it, the good way, the dharma, the dharmic way. So, what I'm trying to get at is it's not just a purely Western concept or Eastern concept. This division of reality, this ordering of reality in terms of facts and norms, in terms of is and oughts, has a long history. You know, it has a deeper, greater repercussion. And and if I think in the European context, I'm immediately thinking of how it's tied into the teleological idea of reality, which obviously in the European context comes from Aristotle, um, at least in the context of modern law, because um, a lot of this stuff is from the Romans and Roman law, civil codes. Um, but I mean, even in the East, this whole idea of teleological reality is very much there. It's very alive, you know, and you see it in the idea of moksha. You see it in the idea of dharma. You know, there is a should underlying all of this, and teleology means that there is a destination we are walking towards. There is a purpose, there's a goal to life, there's a goal to reality which it is constantly moving towards or striving towards. And when we align ourselves with that goal, that is good action, that is the good path, that is dharma, that is when we start moving towards moksha. That's when we align with the divine purpose, right? which which is how the Abrahamic religions call it, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, right? And mm, what I want to do, I think, with this channel now is poke some holes and perforate this idea of reality. Because this whole idea of dharma, the movement towards moksha, the divine, aligning with the divine will, this is what law is, right? Like this is how this is the origins of law, if there is such thing as origins. this is this is very closely connected to legal matters, you know. I mean, where did the idea of law uh, emanate from? And I'm not just talking about modern law, though modern law is also very much a part of it, but um, I think this has a way longer history, which goes to the beginning of civilization, really, back to ancient Mesopotamia. And I think there is something very grave in this way of thinking. It's important to first of all notice that this is how we have been thinking for thousands of years, not just about the law, but about reality. And why am I talking about all of this on a channel called The Unsettling Witch? Because my brothers, my sisters, my babes, magic is all about apprehending reality, right? Magic and witchcrafts. It's it's about our orientation to reality. So all of this obviously becomes relevant. So, yeah, in this video, I think I just wanted to kind of mark this teleological turn, which begins, let's say, um, I want to say 10,000 years ago, but let's say 8,000 years ago. And yeah, maybe keep talking a bit more about it because I think it's related to not just like these big philosophical discussions, but it's related to how we do life every day. And I think that's maybe one of the things I want to cover on this channel. And I think I just also want to use this as a thought dump, really, because I feel like there's so much I need, which has been kind of brewing inside of me, and I just need to put it out there and think together with you all. So, if you found this reflection interesting in any way, just leave a comment, give a like, and I'm not used to making videos at all, so I'm sorry this is so dark. But hopefully, in the coming days, weeks, months, I figure out some of the ways of doing this YouTube thing, this video thing, and we get into some interesting discussions. Well, thanks for watching and hope you have a nice time wherever you are. Cheers.